Hey everyone, welcome to this beginner tutorial for Simply Cloud Studio. Today I will walk you through the basics of working with this amazing Blender add-on. First, let me show you how to install the add-on. First, go to Edit, Preferences, then under Add-ons, press this little arrow button, Install from disk. Now paste the file path where you saved the zip file of the add-on, select it, Install from disk. Now make sure it's activated here. Now in Blender, you can press the N button and the side panel will pop up. And here under Simply Add-ons, you can see Simply Cloud Studio. Let's start with the very basics of the add-on. Now at first, we have these two options, but we will talk about them later. For now, I will start with a simple plane. Now you can see we get two more options, Convert to Simply Cloth and Add Collision. Now also we want to stay in the simulate mode. I will talk about the different modes later. So now we can just turn this plane into a cloth object. You can see it turns round. Now that's because it gets assigned a lot of new modifiers. And it turns round because of the Simply Subsurf modifier. This one. And that's also because it's just one singular face. So first we need to subdivide the plane a couple of times. Just go into edit mode, select everything and subdivide. Then press Shift and R to repeat the step a couple of times. Something like this should look good. And now we have this cloth plane. In the simulate mode we have all the options related to cloth simulation. If we turn on overlay or back settings, we get a few extra options like face orientation or wireframe. I will also talk about these later. Also shade smooth or shade flat. Here it's a good idea to adjust the end frame duration. I will do something like 1000 right now. So that way the simulation will go on. Otherwise it will stop at 250 frames. Now if you press play, you can see the plane starts to fall, but nothing really happens. That's because we need a collision object that can interact with the plane. So let's just add a cube in the scene, scale it down a bit, and position it under the plane. And now you can see, if you press play, nothing happens again. That's because we need to add collision to the cube. Here we have a few collision settings. And now if we press play, you can see both objects are interacting with each other. And the plane behaves like a cloth object. Okay, pretty cool. Now to return to the first frame, we can just press stop. Okay. Now let's get rid of these again. And let me show you a more interesting scene. Here I just have a couple of spheres in the cube. Now all of these are collision shapes, as you can see. And I also have a bigger, fairly high resolution plane. Here you can see all the presets that come with Simply Cloud Studio. So this is the default cloth setting. You can see we get a much more interesting result already. We can change the cloth properties on the fly during the simulation. So now it behaves like leather. We could also do a silk. To stop the simulation, just press stop or spacebar. A nice one is heavy silk as well. Now if we decrease the collision friction on the object, you can see the cloth slides down now. Because now the object pretty much behaves like it's made out of glass or something. And it loses all its grip. Again, to stop the simulation, you can just press stop or use the timeline buttons to return to the first frame. One very important setting is the self-collision. Let me show you what happens when I turn it off. Now the cloth only interacts with the collision objects, but not with itself. That means we get these ugly intersections here that we don't want. Here you can see, we don't want that. So always remember to turn on self-collision. It will slow down the simulation a little bit, but it's always worth it. As you can see, it looks much better. Now we can also add a second plane here and make cloth objects interact with other cloth objects. Let me show you that real quick. So we can just add another plane, subdivide it a couple times, turn it into a cloth object. Let's choose cotton here. Also enable safe collision as always. And now if we press play, you can see both cloth objects are intersecting with each other. This is the result that we don't want. Let me show you how to fix this now. So first, let's press stop again. So to fix that, we have to enable collision with others. That means that a cloth object will interact with other cloth objects. Now you can see they are not intersecting with each other anymore. But you can also see that the simulation gets slowed down a bit. So keep in mind, the more cloth objects you have in the scene that are interacting with each other, the more it will impact performance. Now let me show you a very important part of SimplyCloth Studio, the sewing section. Now if we go into edit mode, and let's just delete a row of vertices here. Maybe these. Press X and delete the vertices. Now we have 4 separate panels. And if we press play again, they will interact with the environment independently. Now to connect these panels again, we use something that's called sewing. It's just like in real life. If you connect 2 cloth panels with each other, you will sew them together. And for that we have to select a row of vertices or edges. It doesn't matter in what mode you do it. I will just do it in vertice mode right now. Just Alt and Shift click the 2 edges that you want to connect. And then press the Sew button. Now the 2 panels are connected by these sewing lines that you see here. And if they're perfectly straight like this, you know that you've done it correctly. Now let me show you a way where it's done not correctly. So if I select one edge and then one edge that is a bit shorter, like here. Now the sewing lines are not straight and this will cause a lot of issues later on in the simulation. So we always have to make sure that the sewing lines are straight. Let me show you how to do that one more time. Now when I select this edge, you can see over here, it shows that I have 31 edges selected and 62 are needed for the sewing to work correctly. So now if I select this edge, you can see we have 62 now. That means we can sew them together. So now I just press the sew button and you can see we have perfect sewing lines. So this is the most important rule to keep in mind. You must always select the same exact number of vertices or edges on both sides of the cloth that you want to sew together to keep the sewing lines perfectly straight and avoid problems during the simulation. Now let me show you another common mistake that a lot of beginners make. Now let's say I have 2 cloth panels here that I want to sew together. Now again, I select the same number of edges on both sides and I press sew to sew them together. But as you can see, nothing happens. That's because if you want to sew together cloth panels, they have to be one and the same object. So you will have to select both objects and press Ctrl J to turn them into one object. Now that they are the same object, you can sew them together like before. Now we can just repeat that for all the other edges. There we go. Now everything is being held together by the sewing lines. And it's behaving like one big cloth object again. Don't worry about those gaps between the sewing lines. You don't have to try to make them disappear. We will just fix them later on once the cloth simulation is finished. Remember to always keep the sewing button activated. If I turn it off, everything stays connected, but nothing gets pulled together. So every time sewing is not working correctly, just remember to hit this button. We can also change the sewing force, but around 5 is good most of the time. Okay, now let's say we're happy with the simulation and we want to turn it back into a static mesh. For that we have to go under the finish mode and then press on finish and apply cloth. Press OK. And now you see all the cloth modifiers got applied and we have one static mesh. Now if I press play, nothing happens. That's because it doesn't have a cloth modifier anymore. Now there are still these sewing lines left that we need to get rid of. You can see all of these edges. We don't want those anymore. Now how do we get rid of those? That's very easy. Just have to go into the sewing and press this remove sewing button. And now you can see all the edges are gone. But now we still have these gaps. And to remove them, it's very easy as well. Again, just with like the sewing, select 2 edges with the same vertex count. And just press the Sew Close Selection button. You can see they get merged together. Now we no longer have this gap. Now we can just repeat that for all the gaps that we want to close. And again, it's the same thing as sewing 2 edges together. You have to select the correct number of vertices on both edges. Always remember to look up here, how many you have selected and how many you need. And again, if you don't select the right number of vertices, and you press this button, nothing happens. So every time nothing happens when you press this button, you know you have to select a few more or deselect some. Now just repeat that for all the other gaps. And there we go. Now we have a finished static cloth object with no more gaps. You can see in edit mode it's not that smooth. That's because after you apply the cloth modifiers, some new modifiers get added, like the Simply Subsurf and the Simply Solidify. With Solidify you can add some thickness to the cloth, which makes it look more realistic. You only see that in the object mode, as you can see. Now let me show you another interesting thing. Let's say we have this crease that I don't like. We can fix that very easily in Sculpt mode. Just hit this button here. And let's use the smooth brush. Just select the smooth brush, or you don't even have to select it. You can just use any brush and hold shift and draw over the area you want to smooth out. But this was a bit too strong, so let's redo that and change the strength of the smooth brush. Maybe something like that. And now that's looking much better. Simply Cloth Studio comes with a bunch of cloth brush presets. Let me show you some of them really quick. Here, if we use these brushes, the object behaves like it's still a cloth object, even though the simulation is already finished. Here we have a ton of presets, like push or inflate. And with these brushes you can add a ton of details or remove details that you don't want to have anymore. As you can see, you can do a lot of things, even after the simulation is finished. Now let me show you the pin layer system. Let's say I want to pin this corner in place so it doesn't move during the simulation. Just let me select a couple of vertices. And now we go into the pin system. So you can see we can pin this selection as a new layer. We need to give it a name. Let's just call it pin 1. And leave the weight value at 1. And you can see it creates a weight group for this selection. Now we can also add multiple. Just add another one, give it another name. Pin 2. Here you can also change the pin strength, and you can see how much the weight changes. Red means 100%, and dark blue means 0%. Now you can see if we press play on the simulation, the areas that we selected get pinned in place, so they don't move during the simulation. You can see pin 1 doesn't move at all, and pin 2 moves a little bit. You can also adjust the pin strength during the simulation. There are a lot of situations when creating more complex clothing where this feature can become very helpful. Here, if you make any big or rapid changes, it's better to stop the simulation, return to the first frame, and then let the simulation run again. That way you can avoid things happening like here. You can even animate these sliders, or just use them during the simulation, and you can add as many pin groups as you want. Now let's take a look at a couple more advanced features of SimplyCloth Studio. One new addition that came with the latest update is the Add Dummy function. So just press the Add Dummy button, and we will get this female base mesh. It already comes with collision turned on. And you can change the pose of the character just by pressing this button, and change from an A or D pose. And even use the slider to morph seamlessly between a male or female base mesh. This is very helpful to get a quick start in your projects, so you don't have to import different base meshes all the time anymore. This dummy is also already rigged, so you can give it different poses or animations right away. Now let me show you how you can create clothing for this character. Of course, if you already have the cut and string cloth library, you get access to our 200 plus clothing assets that you can just use to create your own outfits. I will leave a more detailed tutorial on how to use this library down in the description below. For this right here, I will just go under Male, Streetwear, and drag this shirt in. Now also these pants. And here we would already have a finished outfit. Now just press Alt and G to return them to the origin point. And now just place them to make them fit the character. Here you can see we get this intersection. Here a very helpful feature is this Simply Shrink one. You just have to select the target, in this case the dummy. And you won't get these intersections. Now the same for the pants. And now we can press play or just spacebar. And you can see we already have an almost finished outfit. Now of course we don't want the pants and the shirt to intersect with each other. So we just have to turn on collision with others. But now you can see the pockets are causing a bit of a problem. So honestly, it's always best to simulate one layer of clothing at a time. So here, for example, we will do the pants first, finish them up, turn them into a static object, and then simulate the t-shirt on top of it. But for now, I will just do the t-shirt, so let's delete the pants. That's already looking pretty good. Of course, we can also change the presets, maybe turn it into a silk. Alright, let's also increase the weight. Oftentimes this helps with cloth to look better. Even if the weight is unrealistic, turning it up can help. Remember to match your backstandings end frame with your timeline end frame, in my case 1000. Now if you're already happy with this, we can finish it up again. And of course, we still have those sewing edges left. So again, let's just get rid of these. Go into sewing and press the remove sewings button. Now they are gone. And now we can close all of these gaps again. Just select both edges again. Remember that they have to have the same number of vertices on both edges. And just repeat this for every single gap you want to close. Here this area is a little bit more tricky. For this we can go into X-ray mode, press C to get this selection mode, and deselect all the edges that we don't want to have. Here this loop. Now we can select both loops. As you can see, one loop is 24 edges and we need 48. So now we have 48 selected and we can close this loop. And now this side is completely closed. We could repeat the same steps for the other side, but I won't do that now. And now the shirt is already finished. Of course, it's the same workflow for all of these assets. But now let me show you how we would create a shirt like this if we don't have this asset library. There are multiple ways to do this. One way would be to start with a simple plane. Position it in place. It's best to add a mirror modifier to this one. So we would have to cut it in half first. Just press Ctrl and R. Search for this yellow line. So it lines up like this. Select this edge and just delete the vertices. Now we have it cut perfectly in half. Now we add the mirror modifier and make it mirror in the x-axis. Also enable clipping. That way it will only move up or down. And now we just create a shirt shape. To get a better understanding of what certain clothing patterns should look like, it's always best to look at real-life examples. For example, this is the clothing pattern of a real t-shirt. Look at how many panels the clothing has, how they are shaped, and how they are supposed to be sewn together. Always use this as a reference. Search for the cutting sewing patterns of the clothing you want to make, and use them as a reference before you start to make the patterns. Or look at the clothing from our libraries to see what the panels are supposed to look like. Always start with a very low poly base. And just get the very rough shape first. And try to space out all the vertices evenly to keep a clean and consistent mesh resolution. So it should look something like this. You don't want areas with way more or way less vertices than others. Here for the sleeves, to make it fit perfectly with the chest piece, we can just select these edges, duplicate them, like so, and just extrude them out. Now to make them straight, just press S and X to scale them along the x-axis and press 0 to make them perfectly straight. Now add a few more loop cuts, something like this. Now again, if we add a loop cut here, and we would now try to sew them together, it wouldn't work, because on the sleeve part, we have 3 edges now, and on the chest piece, we only have 2. So you can see. So now we would have to add another loop cut here for the chest. I will add another one here. So now we could sew them together. Also, this is very low poly, so we'll just subdivide everything one more time. And now this is ready. Now let's adjust a couple of things here to make it more round around the neck. Just select and drag them around with Shift and G. Now this is a very basic t-shirt shape, but it's definitely enough for now. Now we have the front panel and we can duplicate it to get the back panel as well. Just Shift and D and move it behind the character. Remember that it has to be one object, so select both and press Ctrl J. Now it's one object and we can work with it. Now another important thing is to always check the face orientation. If you duplicate the front panel, the normals of the back panel will face the wrong side. So blue means it's the front and back means it's the inside. So just select this panel and press flip normals. Now everything is facing in the right direction. It's very important to always have it like this to avoid problems during simulation and shading issues. Now we can position them in place. Just move them closer to the body. Now before turning it into a simply cloth object, I would apply the mirror modifier. Just hover over the modifier and press Ctrl A. Now it got applied. And now we can turn it into a cloth object. Alright, now just as before, we can sew them together. Just Alt Shift click the edges you want to sew together and press the sewing button. And now just repeat that for every edge you want to connect. Again, always look at real-life examples on how clothing is sewn together. Obviously, we don't want to sew together the armholes here. And the same goes for the bottom and the neck part. Now here one example. If we select this edge, it selects too much. We just want to select the part that connects to the sleeve. So just select this edge, hold Ctrl, and click the last edge you want to select. And now we can select this one and sew them together. Same on this part. And the same for the back. Okay. Now the same thing goes for the side. Just select the first one, Ctrl click the other one, and sew them together. Okay, now the shirt is sewn together. It automatically detected the dummy as a target object, which is very helpful. So this way you don't get those intersections. Now let's just press play and see what it looks like. Alright, not bad, but definitely too tight. You can change this very easily here by turning down the shrink value, for example. It gets too long though. So let's change the object in itself. We can scale it just on the x-axis to make it wider. Something like this. Just press S and X. Now it already looks better. We can use negative shrink or positive shrink to make it fit tighter or looser. Remember to adjust the end frame settings. Okay, not bad, but we don't have enough detail. The cloth is way too stiff, so let's change that. That's because the mesh is very low poly. So let's just subdivide it one more time. Now if we simulate again, we get a lot more detail. That's looking much better. Let's change the cloth type to cotton. Okay. Now let's increase the weight. Now it folds much more nicely. Looking pretty good, but it's too long. So let's just select these two edges and delete the vertices. And now it's shorter. That's looking better. Remember to turn on self-collision. We can also change the sewing force. And this is looking pretty good. Now obviously a real t-shirt doesn't have the same front and back panel. So this part of the neck here shouldn't go as far down. So we just have to select those vertices and slide them up. We can do that with the proportional editing here. Just turn it on, scroll down to reduce the influence, and just slide those vertices up. Alright, now that's looking better. Now let's simulate, and that's looking pretty good. That's what a t-shirt should look like. Okay, those swing gaps are a little bit too big now. So let's increase the swing force. There we go. And this is looking pretty nice. Now again, if we are happy with this, you can just finish and apply. And we have a finished shirt. Same thing again, we have those swing lines left. We can also just isolate the object. Just press numpad/. Here we want to remove those. So you can just press this button or select them first. You can see them better, all these edges. You can either just delete those edges or just press this button. And there we go. Now it's the exact same workflow that I showed before. Select the edges and press to close selection. Again, remember here, go into X-ray, deselect those. And close this up. Alright. By the way, you can get this quick access menu by just left clicking a button inside Blender and adding it to the quick menu. Now if you press Q, you get this quick access menu. This is a very helpful shortcut inside Blender. You can do that with pretty much every button that you use a lot. Here, for example, if I just press Q, I can go back into X-ray mode very fast. I don't have to go up there and click it myself. Now when I try to close this loop, you can see nothing happens. That's because I forgot to close this gap. So again, if nothing happens, you know that you might have forgot to close something first. Here, now I can close it. Alright, pretty nice. Now the shirt is finished. And afterwards you can also edit it in edit mode. Just select some parts, turn on proportional editing, and you can make it longer or wider, and just adjust it afterwards. Now we could even turn this object back into a cloth object, but first you would have to delete the modifiers. So just make it one object that doesn't have modifiers at all, and turn it back into a cloth object. There you can see, it gets all the same modifiers back. And we can simulate it again. That way we can adjust it and make it look even more natural. Now it's a little bit too big because it saved the shrink from before. You can just change that. And now we have a much tighter shirt. So every time you finish up cloth, you can just do that. Adjust it again, finish it up, and now all the swing lines are already gone, of course. Now let me show you a new and very easy way to create cloth patterns inside of Simple Cloth Studio. For that we need to use the Design, Cut and Soup pattern option. By the way, if you can't see this button anymore, you can just go into this Design mode, and you have the same button, Design, Cut and Swing pattern. Just click it and you will go into the drawing mode. Now here you can draw cloth patterns, but if you do it like this, the end result won't be very good. So you can see here. So the better option is to just click once. And then you get a single point and you can press E to extrude it. Now just create the shape of the cloth pattern you want. You can see it already has a mirror modifier. So just connect them like so. You can see around the neck we still have this open space. We can fix it very easily with the selection mode, or just press W. I like the selection box mode. So just select this vertex and extrude it till it connects in the middle. Alright, now it's closed. Now you can just drag them into place. And up here you also have the mirror settings. It's best to always leave the clipping on. We don't want something like this to happen. You can also subdivide these edges to fine-tune the shape even more. Now we could apply the mirror modifier, or first make them curves. That way you get even more control over the overall shape. And we could round those edges here, something like this. But now this vertex is unnecessary, so we can dissolve it again. That's looking better. And now we can make it fit like we want. So let's say I want this part to be more tight. I can just round it like here. Adjust this a bit. And that's looking pretty good. Now Unitard is a very important feature that I will show later. I will turn it off for now. Here you can see the resolution. 45 is good for this size, but the bigger the garment is, the higher the resolution should be. Okay, now we can press create cloth. And you can see it created a finished cloth panel. Now this one is triangulated, so this is a different method of making cloth objects. What we did before is quad topology, and this is triangle topology. Both have their own pros and cons. Triangle, for example, is better suited for cloth simulation and you get better looking results, but it's a little bit harder to work with. Again, we can just duplicate this panel to get the backside panel as well. And now we just have to sew them together. But first, remember to check the face orientation. Blue side needs to face outward. So just flip the normals again. And now it's ready. Here, one example why triangle topology is more harder to work with. If I select this edge, it selects too much. So we can't sew them together like this. But it's good that this is happening now, because I can show you a way to fix this very easily. So we can just go back into X-ray mode and front view. Press C again and deselect those edges with the middle mouse button. And now we can just sew them together. And again, because you copied the cloth panel, both edges have the same number of vertices, so you can sew them together without worrying about how many vertices you have selected. So you can do the same thing on the other side. Go into front view, X-ray, deselect them, and just sew. Alright, nice. Now the side panel here, we can just sew together like it is. Select them and sew. And same thing here. Alright, let's just bring it closer to the body. You can scale it down on the y-axis. And because it's not a cloth object yet, it will intersect with the body like this. But now if you turn it into cloth object, you can see the simply shrink automatically detects the dummy as the target object and you don't get this intersection anymore. Very helpful. Now let's just position this one a little bit better and see what happens during simulation. Change the preset to cotton maybe. And now when I press play, you can see that the arms are not closing properly. I also get this weird issue at the bottom there. That's because I forgot to delete the collision shapes here. And now let's fix the arms. So first we could put everything closer to the body. Something like this. And also increase the sewing force. Let's see if this fixes the problem. No, not yet. Okay, so another way we can do this is just go into edit mode and select those edges. Or better those vertices here. No, it doesn't have to be exact. just this overall area here on both sides. Now activate proportional editing again and just scale it down on the y-axis. This one here. Now scroll down to reduce the influence of the editing, and you can see only the sleeves get closer to the arm. That's what we want. It should look something like this. You can fine-tune it a little bit more, but this should be fine. And now we can try to simulate again. And you can see the issue is fixed. So every time you get issues like this, make sure to try to position the cloth panels as close as possible to something like the arms or the legs, and it should fix the problem. Remember to turn on self-collision. You can play around with the shrink value again. And of course, the back panel has to look different than the front panel, so we can fix that just like we did before. Just go back into edit mode and select those vertices. Slide them up with the proportional editing activated. Scroll down. And now to make this look better, we can go into Sculpt mode. Just go here, Sculpt mode, and then select the smooth brush. Also activate the wireframe here. Also the mirror. And now we can just move it out to make it more round. Perfect. We could also adjust the overall shape with elastic deform. We can press F and scale it up. Maybe something like this. Turn off the wireframe. And now let's see if it looks better. Yes, better, but this part is still too wide. So we can go back into edit mode. And just select these vertices. Then scale them down on the x-axis. And this should look better. Perfect. Oftentimes making cloth more heavy can make it look better. But now this is too tight around the waist. So let's change this. We can go back into edit mode. Select the vertices that we want to change. It's best in X-ray mode. And again, just scale along the x-axis. This should be fine. And now it's looking better. Now let me show you the Unitard feature that I was talking about before. You can see it saved a copy of the cloth panel curve, so we can just work with this one again. Now we can also make the changes that we did before already before we turn it into a cloth panel. Now this one doesn't have the mirror modifier anymore, so we just have to change them manually, but that's fine. Just select them like so, these two handles, and scale them. Make this one wider, and this should be pretty good. Now we can leave the resolution the same, but let's turn on the Unitard. And now let me show you what happens when we create the cloth. First position it closer to the body, and create a cloth. It generates the front and the back panel at the same time, and everything is already connected. But of course now it's looking like one big block, and we don't want that. And it's also not a cloth object yet. So let's first generate the sewing lines. To do that, we first have to select all the areas that we want to be gone. So the arms, the bottom, and around the neck. These parts turn into sewing lines later. So first go into the face mode, hover over an area that you want to select and press L. Not this way, and just select this area here. Again, select everything that you want to be gone. So all the parts that should be a hole in the cloth. These parts we want to stay. So now just press Unitard Sew. And now you can see all the parts that we selected are gone, and the parts that we didn't select turn into sewing lines. Now this object is already finished and ready for simulation. This is a very helpful feature because now we don't have to do the sewing manually, everything is already done automatically. So now let's place it a little bit better and turn it into a cloth object again. As you can see, again you get the simply shrink feature, and it automatically detected the dummy. Now this part here we can already fix, just like we did before. Slide it up, go into Sculpt mode, and just move it out. By the way, you don't have to select the smooth brush, you can just select any brush and just hold shift, and then it will smooth out. Just like that. Now we know it already has to be smaller, so we just scale it down. And that should look pretty good. Now let's try denim maybe this time, and see what happens when we try to simulate. As you can see, nothing happens. This is a common bug that sometimes happens when you use the Unitard sew. Good thing that is happening now, because I can show you a very easy fix. Again, you can see the simulation is running, but nothing is happening. Now to fix this, just go into edit mode, select everything with A, press M, and merge by distance. You can see there at the bottom, it removed 7 vertices, so some parts that were overlapping with each other. And now, if you press play again, you can see the issue is fixed. And everything is looking pretty good. Here again, the arms have a little bit of an issue, but we can fix it just like we did before. So every time you press play and nothing is happening, don't worry. You can just try this fix, and most of the time it will fix it. Now again, to fix the arms, we could try to position everything closer to the body. But you shouldn't go too close. Let me show you what happens. Now if we press play, we get these ugly deformations. So you should be careful to not position everything too close to the body. You can try to position it a little bit further away. Maybe like this. But this is still too close. So let's just do what we did before and fix it in edit mode. Again, just select the sleeve area. It doesn't have to be exact, just the overall area that you want to affect. Turn on X-ray. Just select the sleeves. It should be around the same on both sides, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Turn on proportional editing. And just scale it on the Y-axis. The back panel is also too close. Go to face mode, press L, and you can select just this panel. And position it further away. And now this should work. Alright. Looking pretty nice. Here again, we can play around with the shrink. Here you can see I forgot to turn on self-collision. Always remember to turn it on. And that's looking pretty good. But now the sleeves, for example, are too wide. I don't want them to look like this. So now I will show you a way how we can make the sleeves tighter. For this we have a very good feature. And we do this with the vertex shrink. Here we have to go into edit mode, then go into the extras mode and select the area that we want to shrink. Here we have 3 options: strengthen, shrink and paint inflate. I want to show you the shrink. Just select the overall area. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be around the same on both sides. Something like this. Now go into weight mode and just press on the shrink. And you can see it created a shrink group. Now we can also remove areas that we selected. Now only one side will shrink, but I want to have it on both sides. So now we'll simulate again. And you can see nothing is happening. That's because we have to play around with the vertex shrink slider now. So if you turn it up, you can see the selected areas shrink. And now it's looking more like the sleeves of a hoodie. That's looking pretty good. Alright, nice. Now let's say I also want to shrink the bottom part here. Again, go back into edit mode. Select this bottom area. Turn on X-ray. This looks good. Now add the shrink again. Again, nothing is happening now. We have to turn on the shrink. It's better to do this more slowly. Here we go. Now the bottom part is shrinking a little bit too much. So we can turn it down again. Just go back to edit mode. And remove some of the parts that are shrinking. Maybe just half of it. Select and remove. And now let's see what this is looking like. Something like 5 should be good. And that's looking pretty nice. Okay, I'm happy with this. And now again, we can just go into finish. And finish and apply. Now we have a finished crewneck-like sweatshirt. Pretty nice. Now of course, like always, we have to get rid of those swing lights again. But we've done this a couple times now. So we know how to do it. Now with triangle topology, it's a little bit harder to work with. But most of the time, if you just select those edges, it should work just like with chord topology. But again, just remove the swings. Then select the edges. And as you can see here, it's selecting a little bit too much. Obviously, we don't want this to happen. So what we have to do is again, select everything, press C, and deselect the edges we don't want. Just like this. And now we can press Sue. Same thing here. Now this should already work. I don't think we have to deselect anything. Yep, looking nice. So close selection, and this side is already done. Now same thing on this side. By the way, if you don't have enough space to see what's going on, you can press G twice and slide the edges around to get more space to see what's going on. Now here again it did the same thing, it selected too much. So just deselect this again. And there we go. Now here you can see, I can already tell it has 101 selected vertices. But if I slide it around a bit, I can tell that we have one vertex too much on the other side. So we have 50 here, and now it's 101. So we have one too many. I can already tell where it is. Sometimes it's not so obvious. But here you can see this vertex is one too many. So we could just select this and delete it. This one. Or an even better option, we can select this one and then the last one that we want to stay. Then press M and select Add Last. And now the vertices are merged together and we have 50 vertices on both sides. Now you can see we have 100 selected and we can sew them together. Alright, now the sewing is finished for this one and we have a finished object. Now again, if there are some parts that I don't like here, I can go back into Sculpt mode and just move this out. Now same thing up here. If the smoothing is too strong, you can select the smoothing brush, turn down the strength, and now the smoothing is not as strong. Also turn off the mirror if you don't want it. And that's looking pretty good now. Now the last thing I want to show you is how to make the cloth object follow along with the character's animation. Now you can see, obviously, the cloth and the character are not bound together. And I added this simple animation to the character. But as you can see, the cloth is not following along. So let me show you how to do that. First, you can see the character animation has 280 frames. So we need to adjust the timeline again, something like 300. And now, before we turn this object into a cloth object again, it's best to remove all the modifiers. So just delete those. And now turn it back into a cloth object under the Simulate tab. Now it already fits the character, so we don't need to simply shrink modifier. Just delete this one as well. Now it's looking good. Okay. Now also adjust the back settings to make it fit the timeline. Okay. Also enable safe collision as always. And I don't want it to get bigger or smaller during simulation, so we'll turn off the shrink. Okay, now let's simulate. And that's looking good. Now we can see the character animation starts around at 60 frames. And now the cloth is already following along with the animation. It's looking pretty nice. Now stuff like this always works the best when the character animation is somewhat slow and simple. So if you have a lot of hectic movements or intersections with the arms and the body, for example, you can get quite a lot of cloth problems. But if the animation is slow and simple like here, it should work pretty well. It's also always best to start the simulation in A or T pose and let it slowly transition from the pose to the animation. Now you can see once the animation is finished once, the playback gets faster because the animation gets baked. And now we can check again if we have any problems. But that's looking pretty nice. There's nothing we have to fix here. Pretty good. Now let's say I need the character to be in this position for a still render, for example. So you can just pause the animation here. And now again, if we want the cloth to stay in this position, go back to finish, finish and apply. And now we can render out this object in this position, for example. We can add some thickness to add realism to it. And now we could render it out like this. Now again, if you go to frame 1, the cloth stays in this position. But now let's say I made a little mistake and I want the cloth to be in a slightly different position. So maybe a few frames earlier or later. Like this. Now how we can fix this, for example, is go back into Sculpt mode, use the elastic deform brush, and just drag the clothing into place. You can also do that just to fix up some things that don't look so good, or if you want to add more details, or tweak some stuff. Now the pose brush oftentimes is also very useful, but here not so much. So most of the time I just use the elastic deform brush. Just adjust the size with F and drag everything slowly into place. Alright, that's pretty good. Now this is how I will fix this problem. This was my beginner tutorial for Simply Glove Studio. Obviously there are still a lot more features that I could show you, but I will cover them in separate videos later on. But now you have a basic understanding of how to use the add-on and how to create clothing inside of Blender. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below or join our Discord community and we will help you there with every workflow questions or problems that you might have.